Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, up there in
New York City.
My in-person friend, Jon Tayler of Fangraphs.com.
Wow. I guess that's the thing, when you finally do actually meet in real space, you get that upgrade. You're no longer just a person on the other end of a machine. You're a human being with real blood and a real heart.
And a real love for Miller High Life.
I do love my Miller High Life. If anyone from Miller High Life is listening, please send me your product. I will not do anything in exchange for it, but you should send me your product anyway.
There you go. I mean, you would tweet about it on Blue Sky, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
I
yes,
just tweet about it on Blue Sky.
It's fine. Apparently, I'm not even sure if it's a joke, but the word is skeet. Which I don't. I know. I will not be calling it that. I just say post on Blue Sky. But yes,
what I'm
Miller
hoping
High
is they
Life.
just buy Twitter, the name, and then just change it to Twitter, so we don't have to redo all of this whole process. It's already a blue logo. Go back to what it was. Just split them up.
It's like that Simpsons episode where Homer becomes the sanitation commissioner and packs so much garbage into the ground that they have to move all of Springfield 5 miles over. So. Same basic idea. There's too much trash in the ground, but yes, any company, come at me and I will happily promote your product to my 700 followers on a closed invite beta social media site. So big real estate opportunity there. It is free real estate, as the meme goes.
Hey, but you got to start somewhere, Jon Tayler.
That's
no, we did meet in person watching the Tennessee Volunteers play the first half and only the first half. On Saturday afternoon at Printer's Alley up there in New York. It was a great spot. It was deep. What did you take away, Jon Tayler, from your first SEC fan base get together?
There was about as much banjo as I was expecting. Like I don't think I'd ever heard Rocky Top before, but when the banjo kicked in, I was like, oh, they're serious about this. None of this is a joke. None of this is real life.
Oh no, it's a way of life, you might say, John.
You could say that. Also, Tennessee orange is just a hard color to pull off. You know, it doesn't really give you a lot of sartorial options, but it was a good time. It's fun to see people get, because I think for me, as someone who didn't really get the big time college sports experience and who's only really cared about professional sports, but has cared about them. I'm a Boston sports fan in New York City. It's not the greatest match. But to see a whole crowd of people just really, really into something from the depths of their burnt orange hearts, that was cool. And I did come to understand why it just means more in the SEC. Even if that only extended for one half of football.
Hey, but I mean, even the second half, you just see the demoralization of all those Tennessee fans, like myself, with what was happening in the second half. And just how much devastation Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide can lay still in 2023.
Yeah, that team is Alabama is an artillery barrage when you are underneath them. Like, it is.
Look at Jon Tayler over here, Mr. College Football Man himself. He's ready to have firing off.
I was going to say we'll do the take of the week will just be college football related. It'll just be seeing if I can name more than 5 top 25 teams that are not Alabama.
Well, let's not do that. Actually, after spending a whole afternoon with me, John, and watching the game, can you name 3 Tennessee Volunteers from that game on Saturday?
Well, I remember the dude named Squirrel White, because that's a great name. The quarterback, Joe Milton,
That's 2. You're almost there.
That's where I stopped. There's no chance I name a third player.
No chance?
No, those are the only 2 guys whose names I heard or saw enough times for them to embed themselves in my brain.
Can you name the coach?
No,
Josh Heupel.
Josh Hoople?
Josh Heupel.
Josh Heupel.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Well, no, I that was beyond me. Like I said, the world of college football is confusing and bizarre to me.
Perfect. And not full of cheating.
Look, I'm not a Michigan fan, so I don't have to.
Your Instagram would say otherwise, John.
you go to one Michigan game as someone's guest, and then all of a sudden now you've been accused of cheating and doing illicit things, and corrupting the integrity of the Big Ten or whatever that conference is now called, Big America.
No, it's Big Ten, but it really is Big America at this point.
I was gonna say, are there even 10 teams in it anymore?
No, they're about to be 16.
I mean, there should be the Big 16. I don't know. What are we doing here?
I mean, I think it was Spencer Hall who tweeted out maybe years ago. There was one of those old tweets where it's like the people who thought that naming conferences based on numbers, just a big whoopsie way back in the day. Like what? That was just a huge error in judgment and how things would go long term.
Yeah, I really do think there probably is no good way to name conferences when you run into the problem with any sport that there is just going to be expansion at some point. You know, the fact that and granted, I think baseball probably is it better than most because, you know, a team like Atlanta is on the eastern part of the United States, so it can be in the National League East, but it's a little, I mean, I guess the Texas teams, I guess, well, Texas is perpetually historically and in a sense philosophically the West, so it makes sense, you know, that the Texas teams would be in their respective West division. But at the same time, you know, it's also the middle of the country. Texas is the middle of the damn country. You know, it should be the AL middle. We should, you know, or I guess, well, that's the AL Central. This is really going places. This take of mine. This is my take. Rename the Central divisions the middle, because that's where they belong. Is in the middle, because they're not good.
But
yeah, and that wasn't even worthy of the rim shot, honestly.
Take graphs. Your take of the week, Jon Tayler, is...
You know, I gotta say, for what will be our last show ahead of actual live baseball... Well, I shouldn't say what will be, because there's a chance if the World Series goes more than 4 games, we'll do this next Wednesday before Game 5. So there'll be
I would expect
baseball.
more than 4 games in this series.
I would too. I gotta say, maybe it's just simple take. This has been a really good postseason. I think, you know, I think in particular these 2 championship series have been fantastic, and I think that says a lot in particular about where baseball is right now, that you can have, you know, you can have an 85 or how many wins did the Diamondbacks finish with? 84. It is.
Yeah, the magic number were the Braves 86 when they won.
88, something like that.
88, yeah.
You know, that you can have an 84-win team make it to the World Series. I think, honestly, that's a great thing. For as much as I'll sit there and complain about, you know, a team like the Marlins, or really even the Diamondbacks, with a negative run differential and, you know, probably would not have been here without the expanded playoff slate. Although they would have been the old second wild card, but, you know, that's if they get out of the wild card game against what would have been the number 4 seed, I guess the Phillies. But, funny enough. But... you know, the fact that they can make it this far, and I made a point of it too. It's like, this is a team that's, you know, this is not I don't think the 2007 Rockies, where it's one of those, like, they just got super hot at the right time, but you look at that team and you're like, oh no, this is an actually good team. This Diamondbacks team is feisty in a good way, and I think has the kinds of pieces that can make a legitimate run out of it. And I think the other side of that is Texas, you know, a team that was just great all season with the exception of that 1 month, that legitimately earned its place here, that beat, you know, a very good Houston team in the process, that beat a very good Baltimore team in the process, that beat a flawed but good Tampa Bay team in the process. It says a lot about the varying avenues now it feels like that there are to success within the sport. You know, on the one hand, especially the way these rosters look, on the one hand you have Texas, which spent a lot of money to get here on Corey Seager, on Marcus Semien, on Jacob deGrom, who isn't part of this roster right now, obviously, but still that money counts. On getting Max Scherzer, on, you know, just building this roster. And then on the other side of things, you have the Diamondbacks, who, you know, and this is the point that's been made over and over again going into this World Series. I expect it'll be probably the dominant narrative of this World Series. 2 years ago, these were 100-loss teams. You know, these were teams who were about as far as they could be from this level of contention. And yet here they are, and they took different paths to get there. And I think particularly when it comes to Arizona, it's worth noting and celebrating. That was a 100-loss team that did not look around and go, well, time to burn it all down. They got to those 100-plus losses, honestly. That Diamondbacks team in 2021 was really, really bad. But they were able to turn it around and figure it out without nuking themselves in the process and dooming their fans to some kind of endless Pirates-like existence of just, well, maybe we'll make it, but maybe we won't. And some of that is luck. Some of that is design. You know, those two things I think go hand in hand when you're building a baseball team. Some of that is, hey, we've had both the luck to draft Corbin Carroll and then the intelligence and skill to turn him into what he is now. But to me, it just, you know, for a while there, it kind of felt like baseball was on this path where the only acceptable way forward was tank to get to turn it around and make yourself into this kind of, you know, or better said, if you're not one of the super teams, that the only way forward was just to lose until you built up enough prospect capital to be better. And I appreciate that, especially after a season 2 in which, you know, everyone has made a point of, oh, the Padres spent all this money and they didn't make it. The Mets spent all this money and they didn't make it. You know, I like that the Rangers are here, and I like that they are here to prove that, no, that you can go forward this way. You just have to be smart about it. And I think similarly with Arizona, you just have to be smart about it, which I don't know if that's really much of a take. Be smart in the team you build is not exactly, you know, going out on a limb here.
But it's also like the part of this lesson, I don't know if you're going here too, John, it's that, and this is something that I'm very curious, Arizona, who, by the way, should be required to wear the purple patch uniforms in the World Series.
Throwbacks the whole time. Wear the expansion season uniforms. Wear the 98 D-backs uniforms.
They're so much better. I don't know,
really
like, you just go back and look at them ahead of this series, and I'm like, it's just so forgettable what they're wearing now. They're just not unique, and they don't really stand out. They're black.
No, the Sedona red or whatever you want to call it, it's fine, but it honestly feels more expansion than the 1998 Diamondbacks.
I would agree.
Jerseys.
And also, pinstripe uniforms never look bad in Major League Baseball. They always look good. They
go back to the purple sleeves, like, especially because honestly, look, this World Series, at least for the 1 or for the 2 to 3 games that we get in Arizona, is going to be some real 2001 throwback hours. We're going to get Luis Gonzalez in the building. We're going to get Tony Womack in the building. We're going to get Randy Johnson's already there. Kurt Schilling is not invited and cannot show up to these games. But we're going to get Miguel Batista. Byung-Hyun Kim is going to be there, folks. It's going to be so beautiful. People are already talking about it.
Steve Finley?
Steve Finley's going to be there. Matt Manti is going to be there.
Craig Counsell?
Craig Counsell is going to be interviewing with the Mets for their manager job, so he probably will not be there. But I would love to see... He's got to... Instead of having Craig Counsell throw out a first pitch, he's got to go up and take a first at-bat so we can see him do his weird, like, janky... whatever swing again, but Rubio Durazo is going to be there. David DeLucci is going to be there. The third baseman for the 2001 Diamondbacks, that is a great Jay Bell. Jay Bell is going to be there. You know?
Let's remember some guys. Where's David Roth? Get him on the phone. Bell.
Mark Grace probably shouldn't be there either. Damian Miller is going to be there. Junior Spivey. Where's Midre Cummings? Alex Cintrone. Jack Cust. Jack Cust was on this team? Really? Wow.
That doesn't ring a bell.
Albie Lopez, come on down. Greg Swindell.
I remember
that. Armando Reynoso. Bobby Witt Sr., one of his last seasons.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. This is, look, so maybe actually, you know, I'm going to throw it all away. That's my take. Arizona, to win this World Series, must embrace the early expansion days, wear the uniforms, bring the guys back.
Yeah.
That is their only hope in order to defeat the Texas Rangers, who don't really... I guess the Rangers don't really have that same expansion vibe, but also
I just feel like, I don't know, we'll get into it, but the other part of it, too, with the Diamondbacks before we lose sight of them here, and that's just been the postseason story, losing sight of the Arizona Diamondbacks. Each team, each series is like losing sight of the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they just sneak around. They're like, oh my God, wait, we just lost the Diamondbacks?
Snakes. The snakes they're snakes. They're very hard to see. They tend to stay in the grass, and then before you know it, they bite you.
I mean, that is how a sneaky snake does it, John. And
snake's alive.
Yeah. No, I hope there's this idea now in sports, and like, I think the Rangers, we talked about it on last week's show, they're set up to dominate the AL next year. They're going to stick around for a little while. Like, they're spending enough. They have enough young talent. Like, they should be around the top of the AL for the next couple of years.
Yes.
The Diamondbacks are ahead of schedule, but it's also like one of those things. They scouted well, they've drafted and developed well, but they can't rest in their laurels. And like, if you're a Diamondbacks fan, this is the time. It's weird in sports that you have to do this, but now if you're a Diamondbacks fan this winter, you need to be in Nashville. Like, hey, that was great run.
Now keep it
do
going.
something. Now keep doing
going.
this, because we are not going to be the favorites over the Dodgers next year. We're not going to be the favorites over the Padres. Like, you need to keep spending. You need to build off this. This is not sustainable at this current number and with the talent that we have. There's a reason we won 84 games this year. Like, this was not a preseason juggernaut. This is not a roster built to make 3 of 6 World Series. You're not. So you need to put the pressure on now. You're ahead of schedule. But keep going. Like, you need to build off this. You need to ride this wave. You need to overindulge this winter if you're the Diamondbacks, regardless of how this series goes.
I would agree with that you need to take advantage of the time being now, especially when you keep in mind, too, that a la Texas, Arizona has a good farm system that is currently producing, that is going to keep them relatively well-stocked in young, cost-controlled guys. This is the time. This is my thing. When you get to this point in contention, doesn't matter essentially whether you're here by accident or by design. This is now the point where your window is open and you have to take advantage of it. And I think the similar vibe to me is what the Royals did when they found themselves in this place in 2014 when they lost the Giants. They very easily could have said, you know what, it was a fun ride, but it would be crazy to keep building. No, they went out the next year. They made big deadline trades to get guys they needed. They went out and then they finished it and won the World Series. And then they cease to exist as a franchise, and there's nothing to be said about the Royals past that point. But they saw that the window was open. They maximized their moves in order to keep it open to win a championship, and they did that. And I think you're right that if you're Arizona, win or lose this World Series, you now see what this core is capable of together. And you know too that this core, it's a young core between Carroll, between Gabriel Moreno, between Zach Gallen. There are guys here who are going to be here for a bit. This is not just a random 1-year group of dudes who when the season ends, they are scattered to the 4 wins. This is an opportunity to build something long-term in Arizona, which I think, Mike Hazen and company were already doing, but I think you're right. This is the opportunity to turbocharge it, and maybe this is the sign to go out during this offseason and say, hey, why can't we go after Blake Snell? Why can't we go after Aaron Nola? Why can't we take an investment in Matt Chapman and see if that works out for us? There is room to do that, and I think it'll be really interesting to see, because like you said, Texas, as we both said, Texas is going to be here again. They're a really, really good roster that's already shown a willingness to spend in the places that need to be spent. I want to see that from Arizona too, and I think that's just generally what I want to see from teams in any of these positions. If you're a team that goes into a season feeling comfortably like, hey, we've got a core good enough at least to get us to the postseason, then maximize that. Maximize that to the best of your ability, because you never know. If anything, this postseason proves you never know. No one. I think you could go back and look at every single major baseball publication and website's pre-postseason predictions to see if anyone picked the Diamondbacks. Forget even to win or make it to the World Series, even just to get out of the wild card round.
Yeah.
I guarantee, though, not a single person picked the Diamondbacks to be in the World Series, and yet here they are. I guarantee not a single person before the season picked the Diamondbacks to make it to the World Series. I read a piece, I think it was Tom Verducci in SI, noting that our Fangraphs odds had the Diamondbacks more likely to finish last in the division than they did to make it to the division series.
Yeah.
Anything can happen, particularly when you get to October. The postseason structure, as it works now, is just basically created to do that. So if you're a team in the Diamondbacks position where you have that talent, you have that baseline of, say, you feel comfortable, you're going to be an above 500 team, go for it, because you never, ever know. And I think the Phillies, even though they lost, are proof of that too. You've seen, they lost the World Series last year. They were 1 win away from going back to the World Series this year. Obviously it didn't work out, but again, you go for it, because these opportunities, once that window's open, you don't know how long it's going to stay open. You need to prop it open and keep it open as long as you can.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree, Jon Tayler. World Series as a whole.
Yes.
Why the D-backs will win, Jon Tayler, first, and then why the Rangers will win the World Series second here.
So I think with Arizona, the big thing right now is, honestly, and this feels weird to say for a team that had a bad bullpen all season, but this bullpen right now is firing on every last cylinder. I think the one maybe weak link you find there right now is the rookie Andrew Saalfrank, the lefty, who Torey Lovullo really could not seem to find a good spot for him. Brought him up against some high leverage lefties. It did not really work out, but between Ryan Thompson, Kevin Ginkel, Paul Sewald, that group in particular, that trio in particular has been really, really impressive. I think Arizona is going to have a better time, an easier time getting through the late innings, especially compared to Texas's bullpen, where it really just is Jose Leclerc and Josh Sborz right now, and then praying that Aroldis Chapman doesn't do too many Aroldis Chapman things. Like, hit a dude in the back of the leg at 104 miles an hour, which, I'm not going to lie, I can't... that there's a prompt that goes around social media every now and again. It's like, would you agree to get into the ring with Mike Tyson for $100,000 or whatever? It's like, I don't know that there's an amount of money you could pay me to get hit anywhere on my body by something traveling 104 miles an hour.
Yeah.
The fact that I forget who it was that got hit by that ball by Chapman. It was, I think, Chas McCormick. The fact that he was able to get up within any amount of time after that happening and didn't just lay there like he had just taken a cannonball to the knee, really impressive stuff. But
who was the A who took the booty ball?
Sean Murphy.
Sean. Oh, that Sean?
That was Sean Murphy, who was caked up, double caked up even.
He's double caked.
Yeah, he and Mark Canha.
What was that? Was that? I feel like that was a fastball.
I think it was right off the tuchus.
Yeah. Good for him. See, I mean, that's probably if you want to get hit it with a fastball, that's probably like the best spot, right?
He's a catcher. They got buns to steal, so they're
true.
That's the ideal place for them to be plunked. But
right, I feel like if I had to pick, I mean, I'd probably pick there.
I mean, yeah, if you're gonna pick a place that is, you want something soft and fleshy, so I think either that or like the thigh, ideally, especially because the bone, the femur bone in the thigh is the strongest bone in the human body, so the odds of
is that true?
Yes, it is basically has the same strength as concrete. It's really, really hard to break a femur.
Did not know that.
So you probably want to wear a ball off somewhere in that kind of butt to thigh region.
Someone's going to listen to this, take one to the femur, snap it.
Yeah, just going to break in half. They're going to be lying there in a puddle, like going, why?
The podcasters told me this was safe.
The Chase Thomas podcast lied to me.
This fucking hurts.
Yeah, it's just the scene from Happy Gilmore where he's standing in the batting cage taking balls to the chest. So yeah, I trying to figure out even where the topic was in the first place. I think Arizona late innings bullpen there's a real advantage for them there. I think the top of the lineup, in particular, given how slow Marcus Semien has been for the Rangers versus the combination of Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll. I think Arizona in particular has a lot of speed that they can utilize on the base paths. That you really saw it, especially in Game 7 against the Phillies, the way they immediately got Philly off their game by running pretty aggressively. I think that's something you'll probably continue to see going forward. Otherwise, it's funny because when you talk World Series preview, it never really feels like you look at an NBA Finals preview, it's like, oh, this and this matchup or so and so going against each other. It's like the only real matchups that happen are just the pitcher batter ones, and then the idea of like, okay, well, Game 1 will be Jordan Montgomery or Nate Eovaldi versus I am assuming Zach Gallen or one of Zach Gallen or Merrill Kelly, probably Gallen. So but otherwise, these two teams feel pretty well matched in most regards.
Yeah.
I think the pitching feels kind of the same for both of them. They both have pretty good options for their number 2 starters. Number 3 is a little shaky. On Texas' side, you've got Max Scherzer, who did not look particularly good in either of his 2 starts against Houston. For Arizona, you've got Brandon Pfaadt, who's looked very good, but on the other hand, I don't think, or very better said, does not look like a guy that Torey Lovullo trusts to get more than twice through the lineup, maybe start the 3rd time, but I don't really know about that. And then the 4th start is really just going to be a total toss-up. Arizona went with the bullpen game. Texas went with Andrew Haney, which quickly gave way to Dane Dunning, so basically a bullpen game with long relievers. The lineups, I think Texas has more power. Arizona's probably got more speed. Defensively, these are both 2 pretty good defensive teams all the way around. This does really feel like a pretty evenly matched World Series. It does not feel like one team really has a substantial edge anywhere. Like I said, I think the one that really stands out to me for Arizona, it's the late innings with the bullpen. For Texas, it's a lineup that I think more similar to Philly, has the ability to hit a home run from pretty much anywhere, top to bottom in that lineup. that just get some instant offense on the board. With Arizona, you didn't really see that. Some home runs scattered in there aside, and obviously that there's always a threat of that from Carroll, from Christian Walker, from Gabby Moreno. That's more a team that is building its runs bit by bit. Like I said, aggressive base running, going into the gaps with their line drives. Trying to kind of create runs that way. So, I don't know that either of those really lends itself to saying, oh well, I think this is this is necessarily what makes this team, that gives this team the advantage over the other. I do think though that the late innings really are going to make a difference here, because neither team has the kind of pitcher, with the possible exception of, I think, Gallen and Eovaldi are the two guys I'd look at, who's going to go more than 6 innings. This is going to require a lot of high leverage late inning reliever, especially because I don't think these are teams that are going to, they're not going to see blowouts on either side. I think these are going to be close games. I think regardless of whether they're low scoring or high scoring, I think these teams keep pace with each other. So, I mean, that's really, I think, the big thing I worry about with Texas is, beyond Jose Leclerc, who's pitched in seemingly every postseason game since the beginning of time, and Josh Sborz, who's been really, really good for Texas as their main setup right-hander out of the bullpen, they are really lacking in options. And I think that's going to be one of Bruce Bochy's biggest tasks, is figuring out how to navigate innings 6 through 9, assuming that he doesn't want to try to get more length out of his starters, which also tricky given how late in the season we are, how much work these guys have already done. Getting a better Scherzer, I think, if you want to look at why Texas will win, it's going to be because Max Scherzer comes back and pitches like Max Scherzer. That alone would be such an enormous boost, particularly in with regards to the bullpen. He's thrown a grand total of, I think, about 6 or 7 innings and 2 starts. They need more from him than that, particularly, again, with the fact that Game 4 will almost certainly be a Haney-Dunning double-up that I don't know that Texas can feel all that great about. But, the more length that those starters can absorb, the better, because the bullpen options are just... Bruce Bochy clearly does not trust anyone in that bullpen beyond Sborz and Leclerc.
No, and I have a hard time picking against the Diamondbacks, John. Do you?
Well, that's the other part of it too, is like the intangible factor of like, this team just has the vibe,
Yeah.
And granted, we would be saying that, I think, about the Phillies too, had it been the Phillies who had advanced. And that's also not to take anything away from Texas, who is, again, just whooped on the Rays, whooped on the Orioles, managed to avoid blowing a series not just blowing a series to the Astros, but coming back from down 3-2 and an absolute gut punch of a loss in Game 5.
Almost killing a Burger King fan.
Almost killing a Burger King fan in the process.
An all-time great. I don't know if I haven't seen a follow-up interview with that woman, but she needs to be found, and I have so many follow-up questions about
who just
how her night was going.
in like that? Like, it's just the strangest way to be sitting directly at the outfield fence, just
and also
head,
not moving. How do you not realize the ball's going towards you with everyone else around you standing up, getting ready to catch the ball?
It's. But look, Arizona does feel like they have the air about them right now. Not necessarily inevitability. They have, as the kids would say, they have the juice.
They have the Riz.
Is that what is the Riz?
I think Riz is like it's like the new, like, you're cool, you could talk to women. I think that's Riz.
Okay, so the Diamondbacks are pickup artists.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so they're gonna nag the Rangers.
We're so washed.
We're
so old and washed.
Look, I have accepted that. I am 30 or 40 years old. Like
I am 30 or 40. Mm-hmm.
I am well aware of how old and out of touch I am with the great majority of culture. I'm okay with that though, because I don't need to be anymore. Like I stay at home on the weekends. I wear flannel and sweatpants. Like, I read large books about the naval battles of the Second World War. Like I'm embracing it. Look, I'm talking about baseball. That is as washed as it can possibly get. Like,
wow.
There's no offense to baseball, but offense to baseball. Like, baseball is not a sport for the cool youths. Like, no matter how many commercials you have of dudes hitting home runs with bad EDM playing in the background. Like,
I don't know. I think it's still cool for the youth in the South. Like, if you look at the talent coming out of the pipeline in the South, like, it depends on the area. You know what's cool? Tennessee Volunteer Baseball, Jon Tayler. Glad you asked. If you want to get into some fall ball, no. Continue.
I will say that, and then this is the general, I think this point has been made, that, the biggest baseball fans will always be the folks who played it. And of course, being in the South, being able to play it year round and the level of competition, I think that region is always going to be the most interested, with the exception of the old folks up here in the Northeast. But
yeah, it really is a weather issue.
Yeah. Also, can you imagine Rob Manfred's face when he learned that the World Series is going to be between Texas and Arizona, happening at the same time that the NBA season is starting, the NFL is in full swing, college football is going, and he's got to try to figure out a way to sell huge, crazy desert metropolis against other huge, crazy desert metropolis, where you can name like maybe 3 guys on the 2 teams combined if you're a casual baseball fan.
But can we also say, I'm glad you brought this up, I'm going to curse again. The fucking dorks who care so much about ratings in this shit. If your first reaction is to any sporting event of, oof, I don't know what these TV execs are I don't know how you sell blank, blank, blank. That is not your job. Your job, you lucked out. You don't have one of the worst jobs in America where you have to watch sports through the lens of, how am I going to get people to watch this?
Yeah, the worst job in America is Speaker of the House, apparently.
Well, that's also true.
Or President of Baseball Operations for the Boston Red Sox. One of those two, given how many people either said no or got rejected for it.
Both fair, and points well taken, John. But in terms of just like looking at this game, like, folks, I promise you're not getting hired by NBC to have these conversations. You don't have to worry about this. This is not why you watch sports. You do not watch for ratings. Stop watching for ratings or tweeting about, ooh, I don't know how people, like the Nuggets run last year. Ooh, the Nuggets are awesome. What does that mean for the NBA? Oh, San Antonio with this dynasty. What does that mean? You know what was awesome? San Antonio basketball for like 15 years. They were really fun to watch. Why do you care? You don't care what market they're in.
Yeah, you
Just
know what's
enjoy
awesome?
Tim Duncan.
You know what's awesome? Nikola Jokic. Just perpetually. That dude rules. I don't watch any basketball, and I know that. That dude's
now,
great.
if your issue is there's not a lot of star power, like you're like, hey, I wish there were some needle movers in terms of like Bryce Harper, like him or hate him, he was a needle mover. And the Phillies team had a lot of personalities that were needle movers. The Astros, even though a lot of those guys have departed over the last few years, they were a needle mover in terms, not of ratings, but just like obvious guys to a lot of the culture. And they were just bigger names. And if you're saying
to say nothing of the narrative with the Astros too, where it's
right.
The easy, just like the evil cheaters who cheated, like, I think that's the thing is like, a Rangers Diamondbacks World Series, and look, I don't care about the ratings at all. MLB gets its money regardless. Fox got its money regardless.
Yeah.
The sport of baseball will go on even if only 1,000 people watch each one of these games. Yes. And for people who like baseball and care about it, who gives a shit? It's going to be a fun matchup between 2 really cool teams. I think that's the thing though, is that the narrative, if you want to try to construct one for Arizona, Texas, that's kind of why I said that I think the dominant narrative of this is going to be, boy, these 2 teams were stinky as hell 2 years ago. And now look at them. But there is not really an obvious star.
And they got there in totally different ways.
And they did. And I think that's probably the narrative that's more interesting to people who already care about what's going on in the sport and already care about the postseason in general. I think that's the thing. This is not a World Series that's going to bring in casual and outside fans to be like, oh, hey, this cool. Like, I don't know that the casual fan, or even, better said, I don't know that the outside person or even a casual fan, like, is really aware of like, oh, hey, Adolis Garcia, that guy's awesome. Like, he is awesome, and I really hope that he continues doing what he's doing, and I really am sad that we didn't get Rangers Phillies because I really would have enjoyed him and Bryce Harper just having a petty, like, I made a point. Those 2 would have been cutting WWE style promos the entire time, and I would have loved it. And that's kind of the thing. Baseball just doesn't lend itself to that kind of like, everybody come in. Like, who are the 2 teams that would have been matched up in this World Series that would have brought that kind of attention? It would have had to have been like Yankees Phillies or Yankees Dodgers or something like that.
Braves Astros Part 2.
Yeah, and even that, I think I think you would have heard still from a lot of people. It's like, one, oh, we did this last year. It's boring. I don't want to do it again. And also, oh, who are the stars on this? Well, Ronald Acuna. But so I think, and again, I don't. MLB's problems when it comes to marketing and advertising and all that are not my problems. They're no one else's problems. And honestly, if MLB can't figure out a way to make, hey, these are 2 really good teams that play really fun baseball, exciting and interesting to people, well, then they should, the people in charge of that should get better jobs or get different jobs or something else. But, I do think it is going to be just purely from the sense of like, I am interested to see how many people will tune in, But I also think the other part of ratings is, especially nowadays when there are 18 million viewing options for you beyond the live sports on your TV, and when fewer and fewer people actually even bother having live television be a part of their lives, those numbers don't really matter anymore. You know, it's those cannot be the be-all, end-all of what is and what is not popular, to say nothing of whether or not baseball is in a quote-unquote good place. You know, baseball's in a great place. Baseball has never, ever been better than what it is now. The only exception with that being that, occasionally the sport will still do some weird things by being like, hey, we're just going to have a dude stand on second in extra innings now. That's just a thing now. And everyone just kind of has to go, oh, okay, I guess so. But the game itself, the way it's played, especially the players on the field, have never, ever been better. And the sport has never, I think, had better performances, has never just had a better kind of vibe around it. Like, again, these two teams have had really cool postseasons. The ALCS and the NLCS were both fantastic series all the way around. And I think this should be a really fun World Series too. I'm hoping it will be, I want to, for as much as in working in baseball, like I want a 4-game series so we can all just kind of, move on and whatnot. No, give me a 7-game series, man. Give me all the drama, all the back and forth, all the action, at least one Aroldis Chapman blown save. Just give me all of that.
I'm here for it. John, most likely not to make it back to the championship series between the Phillies and the Astros next year. Who do you think is more unlikely to make it back?
I think, and this is tough because I think both the Phillies and the Astros are in kind of oddly similar places, especially with regards to their division, where on Philly's side, the giant block in front of them is the Atlanta Braves. For as much as the Braves did not have a good postseason, I don't think that translates to next year. I think we talked about that Braves team is not really losing much in the way of the roster that won as many games as it did last year. That core is almost entirely coming back. They have some pitching issues to figure out, but that Braves team is still going to be there, still standing in the Phillies' way. I expect the Mets to be better. Maybe not that much better, but I expect them to be better. Similarly, with Houston, you have to take into account Texas. I think we've said over and over is a legitimate contender. You have to take into account that Seattle is... Well, I'm not going to take into account Seattle doing anything because Seattle's not going to do anything because they usually don't do anything. But there is a possible universe where Seattle signs Shohei Ohtani and the AL West gets that much more complicated. There is no guaranteed path, I think, for either of those teams. And you saw it based on the fact that the Phillies were a wild card and the Astros were a on-paper tiebreaker away from being the wild card. And once you become a wild card, regardless of the fact that both Texas and Arizona are here as wild card teams, it's that much harder with the extra round you have to play, not having home field advantage, et cetera, so on and so forth. So, I think that is an issue for both. I will say, just based purely on what I expect for 2024, I think the Phillies might have a harder time, and that's probably because Houston is not really losing any core pieces to free agency. Michael Brantley and Martin Maldonado are the main free agents that they have. I know Dusty Baker, and that, I guess that's maybe even the biggest loss for Houston is the fact that Dusty Baker is retiring. They're going to have to go find a new manager. That, I think, will likely have some impact, but at least the players on the field, I don't know that you really lose anything by having Brantley walk at this point. I think it'd just be a net positive at this point if Maldonado leaves, if only so the next manager can't also develop a hopeless affection with him. Whereas with the Phillies, the main thing they're going to have to figure out is, what do we do about Aaron Nola? Do you re-sign him? Do you let him go? If you do let him go, who are you bringing in to fill that spot? Complicated by the fact that, the top of the free agent pitching market really is Nola. It's Nola, it's Blake Snell, and it's Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the Japanese ace who's going to be posted this offseason and who's going to get the biggest contract of any of them. I assume the Phillies will be in on Yamamoto. I think every major contender will be, but it's not going to be easy if they let Nola go to find a replacement. It really is just Yamamoto and Snell, and those guys are going to cost... Yamamoto will definitely cost more, and Snell will probably cost as much, if not more, than Nola. So what the Phillies do there, I think, is going to be really interesting. Similarly, Rhys Hoskins, who granted did not play a single inning this year because of his torn ACL, also a free agent. I'll be curious to see what the Phillies do with him. Bryce Harper was obviously the first baseman down the stretch and in the postseason. I don't know if that's something Philly wants to continue with. I think it probably works out better for them defensively if so, because that lets Kyle Schwarber stay as the DH. I think probably the better defensive alignment probably is what they had in the postseason with Brandon Marsh and Johan Rojas and then Nick Castellanos in right, with Schwarber at the DH and Harper at first base. I don't know if that's what they'll do going forward. They still need to figure that out. I think both of these teams will still be in the mix. I don't expect either of them to pull a Cardinals and just vanish for no reason. They just suddenly are terrible now. I think they'll both be contenders again next year. I expect both of them to be in the playoffs again next year. But I don't know. I can't help but feel, and you can make the argument or you can make the argument either way. For the Phillies side, you can make the argument that the vibes were never more right. The timing never looked better than it did this fall to make it all the way. This team really did have the look of a legitimate, viable World Series contender. They got one win away. I don't know how you replicate that. Again, it's a good thing that the major piece they're only losing is Nola, but they also have to figure out they need a better high leverage bullpen option than Craig Kimbrell, ideally as the closer. For Houston, again, everyone's 1 year older. I think the bigger thing for Houston is 2024 and beyond, because you've got both Altuve and Bregman reaching the end of their extensions. You still, again, got to figure out a way to keep that roster competitive and together. But it almost feels to me like maybe with this Houston team, you're reaching the end of a particular era. Whereas with this Phillies team, it feels like that moment is still there for them, but it's like, how do you come back after 2 back-to-back disappointments like that, of being so close 2 times in a row and then not getting it? Does that wear on them? Does that have a psychological effect? Or does that make them come back stronger, so to speak? Again, all this stuff is intangible. It's really hard to say one way or the other. I don't know that I can decide, ultimately. I don't know that I can decide. I think I said I expect both of them to be contenders again, but gun to my head, I'd say it's probably less likely that the Phillies are here again. That ride that they went on the last 2 years, I don't know how you replicate it 3 times in a row. It's a lot what they did. Where the Astros, again, it just feels inevitable. But yeah. It will stop being inevitable at some point. But
I would go Phillies more likely not to make it back. And I also just think that the top of the NL just continues to be a little bit beefier, and I just think the AL is still pretty too. Like the Yankees, I think will still be down next year. The Red Sox obviously are gonna be down.
Yeah, a lot of what happens with the Astros is going to depend on what Baltimore does, what Texas does, what Tampa Bay does, what the Yankees do. Because you're right, there are a lot of question marks with regards to the AL's top contenders. Yeah. Whereas with the NL, you feel good about the Braves, you feel good about the Dodgers, even if this is the end of Clayton Kershaw. You feel good. I think you feel better about the Padres because they're not just going to. AJ Preller's not just going to sit back and go, well, that didn't work.
Diamondbacks also. I mean,
the Diamondbacks.
The Giants are going to keep trying.
The Giants are going to keep trying. I think you're going to see. I think the Cubs are in a place where they might finally be ready to make some moves again. The Mets, with Steve Cohen, are not just going to sit back and go, well, another 75-win season incoming.
I don't know. Nothing would surprise me with Cohen and the Mets. Like, I have no idea what to do with them because there's some Boston Red Sox Chaim Bloom vibes here a little bit with the new.
Well, let's see what David Stearns does. I do think that similar to Bloom, the priority for him is going to be we've got to build this farm system up so it's producing on the regular. But I don't know that Cohen and particularly that fan base are going to swallow, and that means we're going to aim for 82 wins and from here into the end of the earth. But. I do think,
that's the problem. Is like if you want to go that way, it's like I don't know if you have to explain to Cohen like this is a 4 to 5 year deal if you go down that rabbit hole.
But I do think, I was gonna say I do think it's a good point that you made that the top of the AL seems a little riper to be taken down, whereas with the NL, the Phillies had I would say it's not luck that they took out the Braves 2 years in a row, but they also had the luck that the Dodgers got knocked out 2 years in a row before they had to face them. At luck, I should say. I mean, the Diamondbacks beat them anyway, but those 2 teams are going to be atop the National League for quite a bit, and those are 2 really hard teams to displace. So, and I think you're right. Houston doesn't have that same challenge in front of it. It really is Texas, Baltimore if Baltimore tries, the Yankees if they. And I don't even know about the Yankees.
I don't think the Yankees are a challenge next year.
No, and I think there's a lot of work that team still needs to do. And then you get to that second tier. Yeah, maybe the Blue Jays, maybe the Twins, similarly with Baltimore.
No,
if the Twins decide to make any kind
there's
of
not
move.
one person in Houston. It's like Dana Brown's like, ooh, what do we do if Minnesota really gets after it this winter? What are we looking at?
Everyone's
here?
just sitting there wringing their hands, going, but the Twins,
not the Twins,
not the Twins.
Now I've got that old country. This is really big and rich. The old college game day and Twins is stuck.
Oh yeah, the Coors Light commercial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Twins. fans. They should lean into that.
Well,
Minnesota.
apparently one of those guys is a super MAGA QAnon
don't
dude,
lean into that. I take it all back.
which, no real surprise that, of any part of a big-time country music, it just went in that direction.
Yeah.
No offense to your country music-oriented fans. I know you live in the capital of the state capital, the state that is the capital of country
Hey, there's
music.
a lot of good country guys out there. You don't have to be that, but there are some that much is true. Jon Tayler, what can the good folks check out from you? Oh, as we wrap up here, 10 seconds or less. Your final World Series prediction is what?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go with Rangers in 7.
Okay. I'm
I
going
think
to go
it goes to full
Diamondbacks in
7.
6.
Okay. I could be persuaded either way. I just think I like Texas's lineup, I think, just a bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that just makes a difference to me. I think Rangers in 7, I think they're going to have one of those meltdown bullpen losses that makes Rangers fans actively wonder if there's a point to living in the universe, but I think they ultimately pull it out anyway.
There you go. What can the good folks check out from you and the team over on Fangraphs.com today? Become a subscriber today. There's not a better time. World Series
There
week.
really is not a better time. So obviously we will have a full World Series preview running Thursday, actually tomorrow, Thursday, from Ben Clemens, who's going to break down all the cool stuff about the World Series and what we can expect to find coming out of it. One thing that I recommend eventually that'll be coming out is our own Meg Rowley, our editor-in-chief, who is in Arizona and has been going to the Diamondbacks games in the postseason, is going to write about basically just where this team is at and the vibe of this whole postseason. Meg is a terrific writer. I love the stuff she does. Keep an eye out for that. You're not going to want to miss that. As I mentioned last week, we are also getting our top 50 ready. Speaking of Aaron Nolan, Blake Snell was actually just having a conversation with Ben Clemens about that in our rankings with those two guys. We're going to rank the top 50 free agents once free agency starts, which is 5 days after the end of the World Series. I know, the offseason is just immediately here. So definitely keep an eye out for that. That is going to be the start of all our major offseason content, which is going to include our team prospect lists, which is going to include Jay Jaffe's Hall of Fame content. And again, the Hall of Fame stuff is coming too, baby. That's the offseason for you right there.
Jay Jaffe just getting ready, stretching as we end this podcast.
Big stretches.
Popping the fingers, all that.
It's going to be wild. So now, like the man said, now is the time to get on board with a Fangraphs membership, $60 a year or $5 a month. Or sorry, I feel like I always get this wrong now. Is it $60 a year or
carry the 3?
Take away 2. You know what? When you click on the website, it'll tell you in money terms what you need to give.
Hey, guess what? You can afford it. Don't even look at it. Don't be a dweeb. Just sign up blindly.
Just give up your avocado toast, you millennials. Come on over to Fangraphs, sign up for a membership.
What could a Fangraphs subscription cost? $5? Illusions, Michael.
Everyone is laughing and writing and cornholing except for Fangraphs.
That should be a t-shirt. How is this not a t-shirt on the store?
We'll put that on a t-shirt. If you want, I will make you that t-shirt if you sign up for a membership because of this podcast. I will figure out how to make t-shirts and I will make you that t-shirt after I make one for myself that I will then wear to winter meetings.
Yeah, no. And there you go. Jon Tayler, always a pleasure, my friend. Listen to Effectively Wild on 1.6 speed, as I recommended over the weekend after you listen to this very show.
Yeah, turn Ben and Meg into chipmunks if you have to.
It's an unbelievable delight because the podcast is great, but it's one of my favorite things I discovered of late. Jon, thank you as always, my friend, and I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good.